In today's episode, an elderly man experiences the death of his wife and one of his sons just 15 minutes apart, both taking place in water. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying shark attack on Michael Loxton. Welcome to Final Affliction. December 2010 was an incomprehensibly terrible week for Sam Loxton, a retired sportsman who played cricket and football professionally for Australia. After he stepped back from the sports field, Sam dabbled in politics while he focused on raising his two sons through a divorce and a new marriage. He'd been to war, played multiple sports, gave his time to charitable causes, and racked up more trophies and accolades than he could count. But not even his days in the Second World War could prepare him for what was about to happen on that fateful day of December 12th. On that morning, Sam spoke to his oldest son, Michael, who was vacationing in Fiji. 2 hours after the phone call, Sam found his wife drowned in the family pool. But the accidental death wouldn't be the last one for the Loxton family that day. Exactly 15 minutes after Sam found his wife deceased, his son Michael, all the way in Fiji, dove into the salty tropical waters from his sailboat's deck, unknowingly swimming straight toward his death. The 47-year-old was every bit the sportsman that his father had been, and his strokes were smooth and powerful. His wife was below deck, taking a nap. The pair had spent most of the morning out on the sunny deck or in the water snorkeling along the coastline. Michael wasn't nearly as easily tuckered out, so he sent Carol off to bed and decided to take a dip instead of keeping himself company on the boat. The only other person besides Michael and Carol on board was a deckhand, a 19-year-old lad who kept up with maintenance and the general care and upkeep of the vessel. Fane was keeping himself busy at the back end of the vessel, reorganizing Michael's fishing gear. As Michael swam farther and farther away from the safety of his sailboat, beneath him, a young 6-foot male bull shark had been following him since he'd splashed into the water. The animal just happened to be passing by, and like every predator in the ocean, it wasn't going to allow a meal that had practically landed on top of it to go to waste. Around 100 yards away from where the craft was anchored, Michael made a lazy turnaround, about to head back. The predator beneath him realized that it needed to act quickly. The ship wasn't that far away, and the pale creature above it was a fast swimmer. If the human made it back to the boat, the free meal was as good as gone. 50 yards away from the safety of the vessel was when the creature decided to strike. With a surge of primal ferocity, the beast lunged upwards towards Michael. Its jaws clamped down right on Michael's left thigh. The jagged teeth sliced deep right to the bone. The force that it hit him with was so extreme that Michael, with the primordial predator attached to him, catapulted out of the water with a shower of crimson salt water. 2 meters high they sailed through the air before they landed back in the water. The second blow, that of hitting the surface, was forceful enough to crack the femur in two. It only took one shake of the beast's head to detach the leg from its owner. The attack was so swift, so unexpected, that Michael only managed to let out a single scream while he was airborne. Michael briefly registered the agonizing pain in his leg, but before he could realize that his limb had been amputated, before he could even think to flee back to his sailboat, his vision became dark. All he could make out was the frantic beat of his heart echoing inside his head, the very heartbeat that was sending every last drop of blood pumping out of the raw stump that used to be his leg. That single shot was enough to alert Fane. When he heard Michael's startled yell, Fane put down the gear and walked over to the other side of the deck. But his mild curiosity turned into horror when he saw the Australian floating in the middle of a spreading pool of red. Speeding away from Michael was a gray fin, attached to a body whose muzzle was holding on to the unmistakable limb that used to be Michael's leg. Fane did not know how to steer the boat, so he threw all caution into the water, so to speak, jumping in with no care if the shark decided to turn back or not. Fane pulled Michael to the boat, screaming for Carol as he swam one-handed. Together they got Michael back on board, but it was too late. He'd already bled out before Fane even jumped in after him. Back in Australia, the news reached Michael's brother James first. He'd been with his father, consoling him just as the authorities were driving Sam's wife's remains away when the call came through. James couldn't bear to break his father's heart a second time, and that wasn't a figure of speech. Sam's heart wasn't in the best shape already. He was 80 years old after all, and James feared that his father could have a heart attack if he got thrown with such a terrible double blow. James kept the news quiet until the next day, when he got confirmation that his brother's remains were being sent home to Australia. The decision was made to bury Michael and his stepmother on the same day. They'd died just 15 minutes apart, both in the water, and so it only made sense that they be buried together too. At least this way, the double tragedy was laid to rest with poetic finality. Sam's wife and son, both meeting a terrifying final affliction.